Okay, so the first step in this is to take notes and understand about all the different decimal operations. So we're going to start with adding decimals, okay? And rules for adding and subtracting in a way are similar, well, or very similar. A rule is, so there's, the Wrapping Mathematician says, line up the dot and give it all you've got. So line up the dot and give it all you've got. Okay, so examples of this. Let's go ahead and say we were adding 4 and 2/10 plus 9/10. So 4 and 2/10 plus 9/10. Okay, so I add the decimals by lining up the dots. So 4 and 2/10, 0 and 9/10, and then the place values are lined up. So the tenths are with the tenths, the decimals with the decimals, the wholes with the wholes, or the ones with the ones. Okay? So 9 plus 2 is 10, decimal, decimal down. Or sorry, 9 plus 2, 9, 10, 11, sorry. 9 plus 2 is 11, decimal, decimal down. 4 plus 1 is 5. So I've got 5 and 1/10 for this. Let's try a different one that's maybe a little bit more challenging. Sometimes it doesn't always line up perfectly. So say you have 41 and 2/10, 41 and 2/10 plus 0 and 35/100. Okay, so got to be careful to line up the dots. Now in adding, it doesn't matter which number is on top, the greater. So if you do 2 plus 3, it's the same thing as 3 plus 2. It doesn't matter which addend is on top. So for this, as long as the decimals are lined up, so decimal and this one, so it's 41 and 2/10. Now it looks weird because I've got this lined up. It looks weird because there's no hundredths here, but that's okay. So I can just say 0 hundredths. 5 plus 0 is 5, 3 plus 2 is 5, decimal, decimal down, 0 plus 1 is 1, and 4, so it's 41 and 55/100. Okay, so those are your notes for now on adding decimals. Okay, now we're going to take notes on subtracting decimals. Subtracting is the same rule. Line up the dot and give it all you got. The only difference is, is 3 minus 2 the same thing as 2 minus 3? And the answer is no. So you're still doing the quote, line up the dot. I'm not going to write it all out because you know what I mean. Line up the dot. But also the larger number on top. Okay? So let's go ahead and say like we have 43 and 9/10 minus 0 and 40, or let's just do that. 43 and 9/10 minus 0 and 4/10. So we make sure we put this is worth more. It's the larger number, so we put that on top. So 43 and 9/10, and then we line up the dot. Sometimes it helps to write your decimal first. Okay, 0 and 4/10. If you have any blanks, it's just a 0. If it helps to put a 0 there, that's fine. 9 minus 4, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Decimal, decimal down. 3 minus nothing is 3. 4 minus nothing is 4. Okay? So let's do, I guess, a little bit of a trickier example. Let's do 14 and 7/10 minus 2 and 25/100. Okay? So for this one, same rule. Okay, line up the dot, give it all you got, and also larger number on top. So the larger number is 14 and 7/10. It's worth more. And now I'm getting rid of or taking away 2 and 25/100. I focus on lining up the dot. There's only tenths here, hundredths here. There's no hundredths here. I can put a 0. 0 minus 5, more on the floor, go next door. 7 becomes a 6. I'm regrouping. This becomes a 10. Okay, and now I can 6, 5, 4, subtract, decimal, decimal down. 4 minus 2 is 2, and 1. So I get 12 and 45/100ths. I'm always, by the way, when I get answers, I'm always in my brain thinking, does that make sense? Is that reasonable? And I think like 14 and a little bit more minus 2 and a little bit more is like around 12. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay? Alright, next up, I know this is a lot of notes, but then you're going to be going on your own with it. So next we're talking about multiplying. Okay? And so for multiplying, this is tricky. The number with more digits on top. More digits. That doesn't mean it's a bigger number. So for instance, look at this number. And then look at the number 5. This has 1, 2, 3 digits, and this just has 1 digit. So if I was multiplying those numbers, the number with more digits goes on top. Another thing is, so that's one note. Another thing is, do not line up the dot. Okay? So in this number, the dot would go here, but you're not lining up the dot. I'm just putting the 5 there. So I've got 3 digits times 1 digit. Look up here. 3 digits times 1 digit. That's it. You're not lining up the dot. You're actually ignore the decimal. It's almost as if the decimal point isn't there. It's like you have the number 0, 9, 9, and 5. So then I do this little trick. I count how many places after the decimal. After this decimal, I've got 1, 2 places. Write it over here. After this decimal, if it had a decimal, the whole number 5, the decimal would be there. There's nothing after, so nothing. 2 plus 0 is 2. And now I multiply using standard algorithm like usual. 5 times 9 is 40. 5 times 9 is 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 4 is 4. So I got this, and now I take this, and I put 2 places after the decimal. 1, 2, and I place my decimal point. Okay, let's do another example. Let's say we have 0 and 35/100ths times 7 and 1/10. Now I know this number is bigger, but it doesn't matter. I'm just saying there's 3-digit number times a 2-digit number. I'm almost ignoring the decimals. So let me set it up. 3-digit number times a 2-digit number. I'm ignoring the decimals. I'm almost pretending they're not there. How many places after the decimal? 1, 2. How many places after the decimal? Just 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. That's going to come in handy later. Now we multiply as usual. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 0 is 0. Next row, placeholder 0. 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 3 is 21, 22, 23, 24. And 7 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. I add up my partial products. 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 4, and 2. And now I use this magic number to say, oh, there's 3 places after the decimal. 1, 2, 3, so the decimal must go here. Okay, and so that is my solution. Alright, the last one is dividing by decimals. And remember, this is like, I could teach these each for a couple days. This is just a really quick go over. Dividing decimals. So say you have 3 and 5/10 divided by 2. So let's set that up with standard algorithm. 3 and 5/10 divided by 2. When you get to the decimal, 2 goes into 3 once. That's 2. Subtract, you get 1. Before I can touch this 5, I make the decimal jump. So one rule is the decimal jumps. When you're doing the standard algorithm, the decimal jumps. So again, that was 2 goes into 3 one time, and that equal 2. I have a remainder 1 here, or a leftover 1, sorry. And then I want to bring down the 5, but before I can touch the 5, I had to make the decimal jump. Now I bring down the 5. 2 goes into 15 7 times, and that's 14. Subtract, and I get 1. And by the way, you can always add zeros here. 2 goes into 10 5 times, and that's 10. Okay? But what we're focusing on is that decimal jumps. Let's look at another example. Let's look at one where the decimal is here. So 3 5/10 divided by 5/10. Look at that. 3 5/10 divided by 5/10. Do you really want to say how many times does 5/10 go into that? No, that's so annoying. So look, give this the gift of times 10. If you multiply this by 10, you make it 5. But because you did it to this, you have to be fair. You did it to the divisor, so you also have to do it to the dividend. So you have to multiply that by 10. Now the decimal's here. So really, your new problem is 35 divided by 5. And how many times does 5 go into 35? 7. That's your answer. Okay? I am going to put another dividing decimals video up on Google Classroom if you're not ready to move on yet. If you feel like you need a little bit more help. Actually, I'll put a multiplying decimals one too, because those are really new skills for you. So if you feel like you need more assistance before you move on your checklist, feel free to look at these videos, because my video is so quick, okay? So, do your best with these. If you want to rewatch this, you can, but also feel free to, I'm going to put some other videos up that I didn't make, but that I found that can help support you, okay? And then when you're ready, you can move on to the next step.